At 02:23 hours, 3 Ukrainian FP-1 drones tore across Russian-monitored waters at 180 km/h, heading straight for a spy ship that had been crippling Ukraine's naval drone operations. The Russian vessel sat 15 miles off Novorossiysk, its R-381T antennas listening intently. For 6 weeks, it had tracked every movement, every signal, building a pattern of life and getting close to predicting strikes. The sea had been calm, quiet even, but that was about to change. Skimming just 3 meters above the waves, the Ukrainian drones raced toward the ship. Their plywood frames gave them radar signatures smaller than a seagull, almost invisible to systems built to track metal aircraft. 20 minutes after launch, a Russian 4-post R reconnaissance drone appeared on the horizon, flying its routine racetrack pattern 30 kilometers off the Ukrainian coast. Its Canadian-made MX-15DI camera could spot a basketball 5 kilometers away, detecting temperature changes as small as 2 degrees Celsius. At 02:45, the 4-post display lit up, 3 small contacts, low altitude, heading east at 180 km/h. Operators zoomed in trying to classify them. Instantly, the drone's pre-programmed evasion kicked in. They dropped to 2 meters above the sea, vanishing into radar ground clutter, the noisy returns from churning waves that hide low-flying targets. Then came the advantage of wood. Within minutes, their plywood frames cooled to match the sea's temperature. To the 4-post thermal camera, they simply disappeared. The operator logged the contacts as possible birds and moved on, unaware he had just missed the lead wave of an attack. Moments later, the reason for their hasty launch became clear. Russian Shahed drones had found the FP-1's launch site, striking minutes after they departed. The operators barely escaped as 50-kilogram warheads obliterated their gear. The Russian network was reacting, but not fast enough. At 03:30 hours, while the FP-1 sped across the Black Sea, 20 Ukrainian naval drones launched toward Sevastopol at 80 km/h. What followed would lure Russia into abandoning its most valuable intelligence. Ship the decoy swarm, a mix of modified jet skis and small boats, cost less than $10,000 each. Fitted with transmitters mimicking real naval drones, they looked perfect on radar. They moved in formation, emitted authentic signals, and even carried heat sources to fool infrared sensors. To Russian operators, it appeared to be the largest drone assault since October 2022. The deception was flawless. The Ukrainian operators guided the swarm via satellite for the first 50 kilometers before switching to autopilot. The fake drones spread into attack formations, performed evasive maneuvers, and approached realistic targets, all to sell the illusion. At Novorossiysk, the Russian admiral had 6 K-27PL helicopters ready, with 4 more at Sevastopol, the fleet's only real defense against naval drones. Ships were too slow, and fighters couldn't hover. Helicopters, however, could drop depth charges and sweep wide sectors quickly. Doctrine dictated they respond to the visible threat first. All 6 Novorossiysk helicopters launched west at 270 km/h, their rotors thundering into the night. Each minute they flew west was another minute the real attack advanced east, unchallenged. By the time they realized the ruse, they'd be hundreds of kilometers off course. The spy ship, now exposed and without air cover, was vulnerable. The 3 FP-1s adjusted course 15 degrees north, exploiting a weakness Ukraine had discovered months earlier. 2 Russian Podlet K-1 radar stations covered the sector, each rotating 10 times per minute. For 4 seconds every minute, their sweeps left a small gap, a 2-kilometer-wide corridor of invisibility. But the Russians had started desynchronizing the radars, shrinking the window. The first drone slipped through at 04:47, visible for 2 seconds, then gone. The second followed, perfectly timed. The third began drifting off course due to a gyroscope fault. At 04:49, it corrected hard north, burning precious fuel just as the radars shifted back in sync. The operator briefly saw a fast-moving blip, but dismissed it as a bird. The third FP-1 made it through, but with only a minute of fuel left for the final strike. Meanwhile, the spy ship maintained its station 15 miles off Novorossiysk, protected by 2 patrol boats circling 5 kilometers out, standard practice since the loss of the Moskva. At 05 am, the decoy fleet played its final act. As the Russian helicopters neared, the drones scattered. Some ran aground, others circled until fuel ran dry. Their mission was complete. The helicopters wasted an hour, and most of their ammunition chasing $10,000 decoys. When they turned back, half their fuel was gone, and they were 180 kilometers off station. By 06 UR, the lead FP1 was 240 kilometers from its target when its GPS began to drift east. The drone wasn't turning, reality was. The Russians had activated their R-330ZH JITEL system from Crimea. This wasn't simple jamming, it was deception, broadcasting fake GPS signals that rewrote the battlefield itself. 100 watts versus real satellites running at just 0.0001 watts. The Russians had mastered that trick, pulling drones out of the sky one by one. Now they were walking the FP1 straight toward a Panzer battery. But the Ukrainians had learned too. Every 50 kilometers, old oil platforms dotted the Black Sea. The FP1's basic cameras could spot them from 5 kilometers away, recalibrating its course using preloaded coordinates. No spoofing could beat the oldest sensor of all. The human eye, the Mark I Mod 1 eyeball. The second drone never made it. At Euro 6:15, its GPS died, not from jamming, but a cheap Chinese capacitor that couldn't handle the cold. It switched to inertial navigation, but that system drifts 10 meters a minute over water. 8 kilometers off course, it was heading for empty ocean. By 06:45, it hit the sea. No explosion, just gone. 2 drones left. The third drone, 5 kilometers behind, still had GPS for the moment. Then the Russian ship went active. Its mineral ME radar swept the western approaches, while its signals team hunted for harmonics, the ghost frequencies every circuit leaks when it resonates. At 07:23, they found something, bearing 285, moving 180 kilometers per hour, 15 kilometers out. The radar locked on. The FP1's threat receiver caught the signal, but the drone's wooden body confused the system. The Mineral M's algorithms expected sharp returns from metal. Wood gave mushy echoes. The radar kept losing lock. The operator reported intermittent contact and possibly birds. The FP1 reacted. Its programming told it to go dark when radar was detected. It shut down everything but its gyroscope and compass, flying blind. But the Russian jammers protecting against naval drones created a new problem. Operating between 20 and 1,000 megahertz, they bled into the ship's own communication bands, distorting radar returns. The Russians had a name for it: electromagnetic fratricide. Friendly systems fighting each other. At Aero 7:25, the ship dispatched a patrol boat to check the ghost contacts. The boat accelerated to 35 knots. The PKM gunner loaded a fresh 200-round belt, braced against the mount, and waited. They had drilled this hundreds of times. Engage at 500 meters, walk tracers into the target, fire until splash. Standard procedure: investigate, identify, engage. But their briefing covered aluminum drones with heat signatures, not plywood ghosts. The lead FP1 had 3 minutes of fuel left. Behind it, the third drone flew on, blind but unseen. Fog thickened, cutting visibility to 500 meters. At 07:30, the lead FP1 reached the target zone, 15 miles off Novorossiysk. The Russian spy ship sat exactly where predicted, still vectoring its patrol boats. The ship had built a radar fence, 2 boats with overlapping ME-1 coverage, each capable of detecting small targets out to 15 kilometers. Soviet doctrine assumed one thing: physics would cooperate. But the Black Sea had other plans. A temperature inversion had formed, warm air over cold water bending radar beams upward like light through glass. The difference was severe: 10 degrees in just 50 meters. The radar's 50-meter altitude return was actually 80 meters. Anything flying below 30 meters was invisible. The FP1 at 3 meters altitude might as well have been underwater. At 07:32, the drone slipped under the radar. A patrol boat spotted it visually at 500 meters. The FP1's camera saw the muzzle flash, then tracers skipping across the waves. 3 hits tore through its wooden frame. 1 clipped the propeller. The engine shook violently but kept going. 90 seconds of fuel left. At 07:33, the spy ship's mast came into view 800 meters ahead. The damaged prop had cracked its mount, but the drone pressed on. The patrol boat radioed, "Drone inbound, bearing 2 at 85, damaged but flying." On the bridge, the crew grabbed binoculars, scanning south. They should have been watching their jammers, the fake GPS signals whispering lies across the sky. The third FP1 drone had been lucky. Flying on its mechanical gyroscope alone, it held its course. Emerging from the morning haze at 07:34, It approached from the port bow at 180 kilometers per hour, skimming just 10 meters above the sea. Then its engine finally seized, sending it into its last silent glide. The lead drone had done its job. Every Russian eye was fixed on it as it plunged into the water, unaware that the real threat was closing in unseen. The ship's navigation radar couldn't angle below 5 degrees, a limitation its designers never thought would matter. Patrol boats were out of position. The bridge crew scanned the wrong sector. Like the Ukrainians, the Russians relied on visual confirmation, and that was their undoing. A lookout spotted the third drone just 300 meters away. Too late. Its camera locked onto the bridge roof, targeting the mast that housed all 3 critical antennas. The 25-kilogram warhead struck the base of the mast. The explosion ripped through the bridge in an instant. The R381T arrays that could detect radio signals from as far as Romania melted. Computers holding 6 weeks of intelligence turned to slag. Metal twisted into grotesque shapes. Secondary blasts tore through the power systems. And when the fires finally burned out 18 hours later, the ship's radar suite looked like something out of a Salvador Dali painting. 6 weeks of data, dozens of recorded drone launches. The patterns that might have ended Ukraine's drone offensive were gone. The ship would sail again, but its electronic eyes and ears were blind forever. Within hours, Ukrainian drones were launching from new sites with new patterns, once again invisible. The Russians could still strike back, but they were shooting in the dark.
The U.S. Navy just crossed a line it can never uncross. No pilot. No cockpit. No second chances. A silent aircraft is about to launch from an aircraft carrier. And once it does, naval warfare changes forever. But here's what no one tells you. This wasn't supposed to happen this fast. Last month, Vice Admiral Daniel Cheever stood in front of military leaders and made a promise that sent shockwaves through defense circles. The MQ-25 Stingray will fly in 2025. By 2026, it will operate from U.S. aircraft carriers. That's not a plan. That's a deadline. And it means the age of unmanned carrier aviation isn't coming someday. It's already here. This isn't just another drone. This is where everything changes. The MQ-25 is as long as an F/A-18 Super Hornet. It has the wingspan of an E-2 Hawkeye. It's massive. It's autonomous. And it's about to take over one of the most dangerous jobs in naval aviation. But that's only the surface. Right now, up to 30% of U.S. Navy fighter missions aren't combat missions at all. They're flying gas stations. Highly trained pilots. Burning flight hours. Just refueling other jets. Every tanker sortie means one less fighter ready to fight. In a real war, that delay could be fatal. This is exactly why the MQ-25 was created. One Stingray can carry 15,000 pounds of fuel. 500 nautical miles from the carrier. It can refuel 4 to 6 aircraft in a single mission. Then land. Reload. And do it again. No fatigue. No risk to a human pilot. But the real danger isn't in the air. Landing on an aircraft carrier is already one of the hardest things a human can do. The deck is moving. The wind shifts constantly. The landing area is barely 300 feet long. Miss by a second, you die. Now imagine trusting a machine to do it. Perfectly. Every time. Sounds impossible, right? In November 2024, the Navy did something no one thought was ready. They controlled a combat-capable drone from a moving aircraft carrier, using satellites and autonomous systems, live, at sea. This wasn't a test anymore. This was proof. The USS George H.W. Bush became the first carrier with an unmanned air warfare center. Not a control room. A nerve center. Built with technology from Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works. The same minds behind the State Route 71 and the F-117. Multiple drones. Hundreds of miles away. Controlled simultaneously. And that's when the Navy revealed the real plan. 5 defense giants just received contracts worth billions. Their mission? Build loyal wingman combat drones for aircraft carriers. These aren't tankers. These are fighters. They'll fly with human pilots. And sometimes instead of them. Each drone will cost around $15 million. Cheap enough to replace. Expendable if necessary. That changes the rules. Commanders can now send waves of unmanned aircraft into the most dangerous airspace on Earth. Suppress defenses. Gather intelligence. Strike first. And if a drone doesn't come back, no pilot is lost. Turkey already proved it can be done. Their TB-3 drone landed on a moving ship, autonomously. China is watching, learning, rushing to catch up. Because whoever masters drone carriers first, controls the oceans next. This transformation is bigger than jets replacing propellers. It's bigger than stealth. This is the first time in history that aircraft carriers, the symbols of human skill and risk, are being redesigned around machines that don't fear death. So ask yourself this: when the first carrier battle is fought mostly by drones, who really wins? And who decides when machines are allowed to fight? Without us, the most powerful warship on Earth is quietly changing. And almost no one is paying attention. No pilots in the cockpit. No voices on the radio. Just machines making life or death decisions, hundreds of miles away. But here's what no one tells you. If this works, aircraft carriers will never fight the same way again. For decades, carriers relied on one fragile thing: human pilots. They need sleep. They get tired. They make mistakes. Now imagine an air wing that never rests, never blinks, never panics. And the most dangerous part: humans are no longer required to be in the sky. Traditional carrier ops depend on non-stop radio chatter. Controllers guiding jets. Pilots responding instantly. But drones, they operate hundreds, sometimes thousands, of miles away. No direct line. No second chances. One signal drop. One bad command. And a $100 million aircraft becomes a missile aimed at its own ship. The Navy had to rebuild the brain of the carrier itself. Satellite links. Encrypted data streams. Artificial intelligence making split-second calls, alone. A single operator. Controlling multiple aircraft. At the same time, what used to take an entire squadron now fits behind a screen. This unlocks something terrifying. Drone swarms. Not one aircraft. Not 10. Hundreds. Spread across thousands of square miles of ocean. Every drone a flying sensor. Every sensor sharing data instantly. Enemy fleets wouldn't face 70 jets anymore. They'd face an invisible net. Pilots hit limits fast. Fatigue. Stress. Weeks of combat break even the best crews. Drones don't care. They don't sleep. They don't burn out. As long as the deck crew keeps them flying, the mission never stops. Now picture the Pacific Ocean. Vast. Unforgiving. If war breaks out, carriers could operate for months. Thousands of miles from friendly ports. Traditional air wings would crack under the strain. Drone-supported wings? They keep going. This isn't theory anymore. Turkey already did it. In November 2024, drones launched and landed, autonomously, from TCG Anadolu. No pilot input. No human correction. By 2025, they plan full combat operations. And here's the twist. They did it without a giant US-style supercarrier. That changes everything. Smaller nations can now build drone carriers. Converted amphibious ships. Helicopter decks turn strike platforms. Naval power is no longer reserved for a few superpowers. And China noticed early. China's new carriers use electromagnetic catapults. Stronger. Faster. Perfect for heavy unmanned aircraft. Their doctrine favors swarms. Cheap. Numerous. Overwhelming. That pressure is why the US Navy accelerated everything. Fall behind, and carrier dominance disappears overnight. But here's the part that keeps admirals awake. Autonomous weapons don't just follow orders. They decide. If communication is lost, the AI must identify targets, threats, and friendlies alone. One failure. One misjudgment. And 5,000 lives aboard a carrier are suddenly at risk. That's why development is painfully slow. Redundancies. Fail-safes. Systems designed to shut down, not escalate, when something goes wrong. Every line of code is tested like lives depend on it. Because they do. The vision is already clear. F-35s lead the mission. Loyal wingman drones fan out ahead. Extending sensors. Carrying weapons. Absorbing danger. If defenses are too deadly, the humans pull back. The machines continue. And this is the truth no one says out loud. If drones prove effective enough, future carriers may not need pilots at all. Smaller ships. Cheaper builds. More drones than ever imagined. The aircraft carrier, the symbol of 20th century power, is quietly becoming something else. So here's the real question. When machines fight wars from the sea, and humans are no longer in the cockpit, who actually controls the battlefield? Because the next chapter of naval warfare has already begun, and we're just seeing the opening move. Deep inside a $13 billion warship, someone sleeps better than you do. Not in a hotel, not on land, but in the middle of the ocean, inside a floating city built for war. And what happens behind these steel walls will completely change how you see the U.S. Navy. Stay till the end, because the final truth is the most dangerous part of all. 5,000 sailors. Endless noise. Jets screaming overhead. Metal hallways. Zero privacy. But somewhere above it all, a hidden world exists. Quiet rooms. Private bathrooms. Formal dining. Secure phones linked directly to the White House. Most Americans never see this place. And almost no one talks about why it exists. But here's what no one tells you. An aircraft carrier isn't just a ship. It's a floating nation. A moving target. And one wrong decision can start a war. So here's the question no one asks. How do you keep a single human being sharp when they're responsible for 5,000 lives, nuclear reactors, and global military power? This is where everything changes. Every inch of space on a carrier is earned. And the higher the responsibility, the higher the door closes behind you. At the top, the captain. One person. Total authority. Absolute responsibility. Above even that, an admiral, commanding an entire carrier strike group. Destroyers. Cruisers. Submarines. Billions of dollars. Thousands of lives. This isn't about comfort. It's about survival. The captain doesn't have one home. He has two. One for diplomacy. One for war. In port, his quarters become a floating embassy. Foreign generals sit at his table. Alliances are shaped over dinner. Double bed. Private bathroom. Quiet. But at sea, everything tightens. His second cabin sits closer to the bridge. Closer to combat information. Because when alarms sound at 3 a.m., seconds matter. And here's the detail that shocks most people. The captain has a private bathroom. On a ship where thousands share everything. Why? Because command never stops. And privacy can be a weapon. Now imagine power on another level. When an admiral boards the ship, the carrier transforms. His quarters aren't living spaces. They're war rooms. Separate day cabin. Separate sleeping cabin. Secure video links to the Pentagon. And sometimes, the president. From this room, decisions are made that can reshape entire regions of the world. One carrier strike group holds more firepower than most countries. And this is the most dangerous part. People argue about fairness, about comfort, about privilege. But here's the brutal truth. Fatigue kills. Bad decisions kill faster. These rooms exist so commanders can think clearly. When missiles are launched. When drones are lost. When lives are on the line. This isn't luxury. It's insurance. And if it fails, everything fails. While most sailors sleep inches from machinery, the quietest rooms hold the loudest consequences. Because every order, every strike, every escalation starts in silence, behind a closed door. Inside a room most Americans will never see. But here's the question that should bother you. If this is how commanders live, what happens when that system breaks under pressure? Because next time, we're exposing the unwritten rules sailors live by, and the secrets they're never allowed to talk about. Visualize this, a floating city, thousands of lives. Every decision could mean victory or disaster. But here's what no one tells you. The people commanding this massive machine live in secret worlds few ever see. Private spaces that hold the most powerful decisions in American history. And what happens inside these rooms changes everything. This isn't just a ship. It's a city that never sleeps. And the officers? They have their own hidden world, quiet, secure, and surprisingly luxurious. On older carriers, officers shared tiny rooms with 2 or 3 roommates. Cramped. No privacy. Noise everywhere. Sleep was a luxury. Planning, almost impossible. But now, the USS Gerald R. Ford changed everything. And the way officers live today could determine the outcome of the next major conflict. Imagine working 18 to 20-hour days in a floating city at sea, with thousands of lives depending on you. No quiet, no rest, constant chaos. Every wrong move could cost lives, and yet, the officers must stay sharp, make decisions under pressure, and lead a city that sails across oceans. Older carriers couldn't provide this. Officers were trapped in tiny spaces. Noise from the enlisted quarters never stopped. Stress built up, morale fell. Mistakes were waiting to happen. Then came the Ford, the $13 billion marvel. Every inch of officer country redesigned. Private staterooms, personal bathrooms, climate control, modular storage systems that make organization effortless. Wi-Fi lounges separated from sleeping areas. Officers could finally relax without disturbing others. Fitness centers rivaling high-end gyms. Advanced medical facilities, full hospitals. Every detail was engineered for maximum efficiency and morale. Picture this, a 5,000-person city floating in the middle of the ocean. Officers walking through wide passageways. Quiet staterooms where strategies are drafted. Wardrooms where critical operational decisions are made over a meal, under centuries-old naval traditions. Here, alliances are built, plans are perfected, and the ship's heartbeat is decided. All within these hidden spaces. But here's the most dangerous part. Life on a carrier doesn't pause. Flight operations can happen at any hour. Senior officers must be alert, ready for anything, while maintaining authority over thousands of crew members. Every rest period is precious. Every moment of downtime counts. And the difference between a cramped stateroom and a Ford-class luxury quarters? It can make the difference between mission success and catastrophe. The Ford didn't just improve comfort. It revolutionized naval effectiveness. Smaller, quieter berthing areas, advanced communication, upgraded wardrooms, mental health support, private spaces for strategy. Everything works together to create officers capable of extraordinary performance. These accommodations are not luxury. They are national security. Think about this. Decisions made in these rooms ripple across the world. Protecting shipping lanes, deterring conflicts, ensuring freedom of the seas. All while thousands of sailors sleep just meters away. And yet, most people will never know this world exists. The USS Gerald R. Ford doesn't just carry aircraft. It carries secrets, strategy, and the very heart of American naval power. So next time you hear about an aircraft carrier, remember this. What happens inside those hidden corridors is as important, maybe more, than what happens in the skies above. What would you do if your every decision could affect thousands of lives, and the world watched silently? Watch till the end. The truth about these hidden worlds isn't over. The next revelation will change how you see naval power forever. Right beneath this steel deck is enough firepower to erase a nation in a single afternoon. No warning, no declaration, just silence, and then impact. But here's what no one tells you. This power was almost never supposed to exist. The USS Gerald R. Ford isn't just a ship. It's a $13 billion floating weapons vault. And once it enters a war zone, everything changes. Enemies don't try to fight it. They try to sink it before it can launch. Because if it does, it's already too late. And the final weapon you'll see explains why. America operates 11 nuclear aircraft carriers. That's not a fleet. That's global dominance on demand. Each one carries over 5,000 people, dozens of aircraft, and enough ordnance to outperform entire air forces. But the real danger isn't the ship. It's what launches from it. And this is where everything changes. A single Ford-class carrier can launch 160 combat sorties per day. Read that again. One ship. One day. More firepower than most countries can deploy in a week. Bombers. Fighters. Electronic warfare aircraft. All moving as one. But the crown jewel hasn't even taken off yet. Meet the F-35 Lightning II. Nearly invisible to radar. Seeing enemies before they're detected. Sharing battlefield data instantly across the fleet. But here's the terrifying part. These jets can carry nuclear-capable weapons. That means a carrier doesn't need to get close. It just needs to exist. And America has 11 of them. The F-35 isn't alone. The F/A-18 Super Hornet still carries the fight. Switching from air-to-air combat to ground strikes in the same mission. Missiles. Bombs. A 20mm cannon that turns targets into debris. But in 2024, something new arrived on deck. Something enemies weren't ready for. The AIM-174B missile. Built from the SM-6. Fired from fighter jets. Reaching targets at extreme ranges. Enemy pilots don't even see it coming. One moment, clear skies. Next moment, nothing. And this is the most dangerous part. It strikes before enemies think they're vulnerable. Getting airborne faster matters. That's why Ford-class carriers use EMALS. Electromagnetic launch systems. No steam. No delay. More power, less stress on aircraft. Jets launch heavier. Return faster. And go right back out. Which leads to a problem enemies can't solve. Older carriers had 3 weapons elevators. Ford-class ships have 12. Electromagnetic. Silent. Moving bombs and missiles from deep storage. To the flight deck in minutes. Land. Reload. Launch again. This ship doesn't pause. It accelerates. Every strike needs eyes. That's the E-2D Hawkeye. Flying radar. Hundreds of miles of visibility. Tracking aircraft, ships, and missiles at once. It doesn't just see the battlefield. It controls it. And when enemies try to fight back electronically, America pulls the plug. The EA-18G Growler doesn't destroy targets. It erases awareness. Enemy radar goes dark. Communications collapse. Missile batteries lose guidance. Entire air defense networks fall silent. Without a single explosion. And then the real strike begins. If a missile gets through, it meets Phalanx CIWS. A 20mm Gatling gun. 50 rounds per second. A wall of tungsten. Add Sea Sparrow missiles. Rolling airframe missiles. Layer after layer of protection. But the true shield is invisible. Spy 3. Spy 4. These radars don't just detect threats. They manage wars. Tracking hundreds of targets. Guiding intercepts. Detecting objects as small as a periscope. Enemies can hide. But they can't disappear. Now comes the cheap threat, drones. And America adapted fast. Coyote and Roadrunner systems hunt drones. Without wasting million-dollar missiles. Efficiency meets dominance. But the future is even darker. Unmanned fighter jets. Robot wingmen. No pilots. No hesitation. They'll fly ahead. Absorb the risk. Strike first. Built by Boeing. Northrop Grumman. General Atomics. And once they deploy, the rules of war change again. So why do enemies obsess over sinking just one carrier? Because if they don't, everything after that is academic. A carrier doesn't need permission. It doesn't need allies nearby. It arrives. and the balance of power tilts instantly. But here's the question no one wants to answer. If this is what America shows publicly, what's still classified below deck? And what happens the day one of these ships finally goes to war against a near-peer enemy? Watch till the end of the next video, because that truth changes everything. One ship. No warning. No escape. A weapon platform so powerful, it can rewrite the outcome of a war before the enemy even knows they've been detected. But here's what no one tells you. The deadliest part of an aircraft carrier isn't even human anymore. And the final truth about how all of this connects changes everything. Modern wars move too fast for pilots alone. Too fast. Too risky. Too unforgiving. Missiles don't wait. Drones don't miss. And a single mistake can cost billions or thousands of lives. So the U.S. Navy faced a terrifying question. What happens when human limits become the weakness? This is where everything changes. These aircraft don't feel fear. They don't get tired. They don't hesitate. Unmanned fighters, designed for one purpose only. Some hunt enemy aircraft. Others slip deep into hostile territory. Others quietly watch, and never forget what they see. A single carrier can deploy dozens of them. No cockpit. No pilot. Just pure mission focus. What would you do if your enemy could multiply its air force overnight? Now imagine this. An enemy missile is launched. It screams toward the carrier at supersonic speed. And then it simply disappears. No explosion. No warning. Because Ford-class carriers don't just carry jets. They generate 3 times more power than older ships. Enough power for military lasers. Invisible beams. Light-speed defense. Targets erased before they even get close. And this is the most dangerous part. The enemy never knows what hit them. Distance used to protect enemies. Not anymore. Meet the MQ-25 Stingray. An unmanned flying gas station. It refuels fighters mid-air, pushing strike range hundreds of miles farther. Missions that once needed multiple carriers now require just one. Suddenly, nowhere is safe. And nowhere is out of reach. But the real power isn't a single weapon. It's the connection. Every radar. Every satellite. Every missile. Every ship. All linked. A destroyer can guide a fighter's missile. A satellite can feed targeting data in real time. Hundreds of miles apart. Thinking as one. It's not a fleet anymore. It's a single, massive brain. One carrier. Targets over 1,000 miles away. Hundreds of strikes in a single day. Defenses tracking dozens of threats at once. There is nothing else on Earth like this. Nothing even close. And the carrier is never alone. Arleigh Burke destroyers surround it. Loaded with SM-2, SM-3, and SM-6 missiles. They shoot down aircraft. Intercept ballistic missiles. Destroy ships on the surface. See. Missiles. Pick a domain. They dominate it. Below the surface, something worse is waiting. Virginia-class submarines. Invisible. Patient. They launch Tomahawk missiles at land targets, while hunting enemy subs that never see them coming. If the surface is chaos, the deep ocean is death. Technology alone isn't enough. So they train. Relentlessly. Night launches. Storm recoveries. Simulated missile swarms. Again. And again. And again. So when it's real, there's no panic. Only execution. Keeping this alive is a war of its own. Millions of rounds. Hundreds of missiles. Thousands of spare parts. Supply ships shadow the fleet, feeding these floating cities non-stop. Power doesn't project itself. It has to be sustained. This isn't theory. In the Red Sea, American carriers faced hundreds of drone and missile attacks. They intercepted threats. They destroyed launch sites. They dismantled command centers. Under real fire. And they held. Here's the part no radar can measure. Fear. When a carrier strike group appears, conflicts often stop before they start. Because everyone knows what comes next. Overwhelming force. Instant response. No second chances. And it's about to get more terrifying. Hypersonic missiles. AI-guided weapons. Space-based sensors. Faster. Smarter. Deadlier. The advantage doesn't shrink. It multiplies. Every system is run by volunteers. Men and women who chose to master the most complex weapons ever built. Steel and code mean nothing without them. They turn machines into power, and power into deterrence. So here's the truth. The most dangerous weapons on aircraft carriers aren't just missiles, or drones, or lasers. It's the total system. A force so integrated, so overwhelming, it prevents wars by making them unwinnable. But as technology accelerates, one question remains. What happens when someone finally tries to challenge it? Watch till the end of the next story, because that answer may decide the future of the oceans. 5,000 sailors. Middle of the ocean. No land. No families. No going home. Christmas morning arrives anyway. Jets are launching. Engines are screaming. The ship doesn't slow down. The mission doesn't pause. And here's the part no one expects. Christmas still happens. But not the way you think. Most people imagine Christmas on a warship as silent, cold, lonely, almost forgotten. That image is completely wrong. Because what actually happens aboard America's aircraft carriers on Christmas Day is something few civilians ever see. And by the end of this video, one tradition will completely change how you see life at sea. Picture this. You're thousands of miles from home. No trees. No snow. No warm living room. Instead, steel walls, jet fuel in the air, and a flight deck that never sleeps. Aircraft carriers don't shut down for holidays. They operate 24/7, even on December 25th. So the question becomes, how do you celebrate Christmas on a floating war machine? Let's talk numbers. An aircraft carrier isn't a ship. It's a city. Up to 6,000 sailors and Marines on board. Every single one needs to eat. Every single one expects Christmas. No restaurants. No deliveries. No second chances. If something goes wrong, there is no backup plan. This is where everything starts to get dangerous. Here's what most people don't know. On Christmas Day, carrier kitchens don't slow down. They explode into action. Over 17,000 meals prepared in a single day. More than 250 culinary specialists and food crews working non-stop. And this isn't basic food. Roast turkey, prime rib, honey-glazed ham, mashed potatoes, candied sweet potatoes, stuffing, cranberry sauce, and desserts. So many desserts they lose count. Because this meal isn't about calories. It's about morale. This isn't new. During World War I, sailors celebrated Christmas at sea while heading into combat. In 1917, the USS Oregon served oyster soup, chestnut dressing, and multi-course meals. In the middle of a global war. Even then, the Navy understood something critical. If you lose morale, you lose everything. One Master Chief put it simply. Christmas is about giving them a piece of home. For a few hours, the ship doesn't feel like steel. It feels human. But food is only the beginning. Because the next tradition shouldn't even be possible. There's no Walmart in the ocean. No Amazon Prime. No last-minute shopping. So sailors improvise. They bring decorations from home. They save them year after year. They share everything. Christmas trees appear in passageways. Lights glow in sleeping compartments. Signal flags, normally used for combat, are turned into holiday garlands. Weapons platforms wrapped in tinsel. This is where everything changes. And when a carrier is in port, they turn on every single light. Running lights. Searchlights. Deck lights. The entire ship glows in the darkness like a floating city of stars. A warship. Disguised as Christmas. But the most unbelievable moment hasn't happened yet. Now imagine this. The flight deck is active. Jets are armed. Catapults are live. One wrong move here can kill someone. And walking across that deck is Santa Claus. Red suit, white beard, Santa hat under a cranial helmet, directing fighter jets. This is not a joke. This is the most dangerous part of the entire day. Flight operations don't stop for costumes. Jet blast can throw a man overboard. Catapults can crush bone. Engines can erase mistakes in seconds. And yet, Santa gives launch signals. Santa salutes pilots. Santa works the deck like everyone else. Because tradition doesn't replace discipline. It exists inside it. For sailors watching from below, that moment matters. It says, "You're not forgotten. You're not alone." This sacrifice means something. And for just a moment, even surrounded by weapons of war, it feels like Christmas. But here's what no one tells you. While Christmas is happening on board, somewhere out there, these same sailors could be sent into combat. No warning. No pause. No second Christmas. Celebration and danger exist at the same time. That's the reality of life at sea. So the next time you wake up on Christmas morning, warm house, quiet street, family nearby, remember this. Somewhere in the dark ocean, a warship is glowing. Jets are launching. And Santa is working a flight deck. But here's the question no one ever asks. How many Christmases do you think a sailor misses before the mission finally ends? And that answer changes everything. A fighter jet rolls past, and Santa Claus is standing on the flight deck. Not a costume party. Not a joke. This is an active U.S. aircraft carrier. Jets are armed. Radars are live. And one wrong move could kill someone. So why is Santa here? Because this might be the only Christmas these sailors get. And the ending of this story is not what you expect. Look closer. Pilots taxi past Santa Claus. Deck crews wave. Hardened sailors grin like kids again. For a moment, the most dangerous workplace on Earth looks joyful. But here's what no one tells you. This celebration exists in the middle of real military operations. And the danger never leaves. This isn't decoration. This isn't tradition for tradition's sake. This is survival. Morale on a carrier can mean the difference between focus and fatal mistakes. In 2016, the USS George Washington did this. And it changed everything. Other carriers followed. Every year. Without fail. Because Christmas at sea isn't about comfort. It's about keeping people mentally alive. When a carrier is in port, something rare happens. Families board the ship. Children run through the hangar bay. Parents see where their sons and daughters work. Spouses finally understand the scale of sacrifice. Then everyone sits down for Christmas dinner. Prime rib. Roast turkey. A massive Christmas tree-shaped cake. For a few hours, war pauses. But not for long. Because here's the hard truth. Christmas on a carrier is not a day off. The ship never sleeps. Radars stay manned. Reactors stay monitored. Weapons teams stay ready. Someone is always on watch. Christmas 2024 proves it. The USS Carl Vinson spent Christmas in the South China Sea. Not celebrating. Operating. The USS Harry S. Truman was in the Red Sea. Missions flying. Threats real. No silence. No pause. So how do you celebrate? When the mission cannot stop. They break Christmas into shifts. Noon meal. Evening meal. Midrats for the night watch. Everyone eats. No one stops working. Jets still launch. Engines still roar. America stays protected. This is the most dangerous part. Balancing joy with constant readiness. Would you be able to do it? Now the details that matter. Coffee. Yes, there's a Starbucks on board. The USS Carl Vinson has one. They call it Chuck Cafe. On Christmas, peppermint mochas. Gingerbread lattes. It sounds small. It isn't. It tastes like home. Mail changes everything. Holiday packages arrive. Cookies. Letters. Photos. Sailors open them together. Read messages out loud. Share everything. For a moment, the ocean disappears. But the silence after that moment, that's the hardest part. Christmas Eve services fill the chapel. No rank. No divisions. Just sailors praying for home. Later. Movies. It's a Wonderful Life. Elf. The Polar Express. Laughter echoes through steel corridors. And then, reality returns. This isn't new. In 1915, sailors aboard the USS New York invited orphans on board for Christmas. World War I. World War II. Combat zones. Even then, Christmas happened. Because tradition isn't about comfort. It's about identity. Let's be honest. They miss their kids' opening presents. They miss church. They miss home. They're standing on steel, thousands of miles away. And it hurts. But they chose this. They carry the joy and the sadness together. That's the price of the watch. Master Chief Stephen Boo said it best. If you can put a smile on someone's face during deployment, you've already won. Not because it's perfect, but because people care. And when that happens, Christmas becomes more than a holiday. It becomes proof of resilience. So tonight, while you sit at a warm table, thousands of sailors are standing watch in the dark, protecting people they'll never meet. Here's the real question. If you were out there, what would you need to make Christmas feel real? Because that answer changes everything. Imagine a future battlefield where one fighter jet doesn't just fly, it commands an entire digital army in the sky. That's the vision behind Sweden's next-generation Flag System 2020, a project that could reshape air combat across Europe. One of its most ambitious goals is seamless networking with aircraft like the F-35 and America's next-generation air dominance fighter. If Sweden's new jet can share data, coordinate strikes, and guide missions alongside these advanced platforms, it would instantly become a cornerstone of Europe's defense network, especially as F-35s spread across the continent. Another game-changing idea is drone control from the cockpit. In the U.S., this concept is already considered essential for protecting pilots and expanding their reach. Drones can scout danger zones, collect intelligence, and even strike targets, while the manned jet stays at a safe distance. With Sweden's long-standing reputation for precision engineering and advanced automation, the Flag System 2020 could evolve into much more than a fighter. It may become a flying command center, orchestrating unmanned aircraft to detect threats, jam enemy systems, and deliver pinpoint strikes. If the program reaches its full potential, it could redefine European air power and cement Sweden's place in the race for sixth-generation fighters. On August 24, 2024, Peter Nielsen, head of Saab's advanced programs, revealed in an interview that Saab is accelerating development of both manned and unmanned fighters. He said this is the perfect moment. They have the workforce, the digital design tools, and decades of experience from the Gripen E, Global Eye, and the T-7A trainer. When asked about cost concerns, Nielsen drew a parallel to the 1980s, when many doubted Sweden could build the JAS-39 Gripen. Not only did Saab succeed, they established a legacy that stretches back to the Saab 21R jet in 1947, the swept-wing Saab 29 Tunnan in the 1950s, the multipurpose Saab 32 Lonson, and the innovative Saab 35 Draken with its double-delta wing. The 1970s introduced the Saab 37 Viggen with advanced avionics and a powerful afterburning engine. And finally, the modern Gripen series of the 1990s proved Sweden could build world-class fighters with modular designs and cutting-edge technology. Now Saab aims to repeat this success. In early 2024, Sweden's Defense Materiel Administration signed a contract with Saab and GKN Aerospace to explore future fighter concepts. Saab must present a demonstrator design by the end of 2025, not a full prototype, but a crucial testbed for materials, stealth coatings, AI systems, and advanced aerodynamics. With strong support from the Swedish Armed Forces and GKN's engineering expertise, the foundation for a sixth-generation fighter is already taking shape. Drone attack sequence, rephrased and sharpened. The defenses remained on full alert. The operator locked onto 3 drones, 2 flanking targets and 1 in the center, and launched 3 missiles. The eastern drone snapped into violent programmed maneuvers, climbing 200 meters, dropping 300, shifting unpredictably every few seconds. These weren't reactions. They were preset evasions designed to confuse missile guidance systems. Each time the radar beam switched, the drone drifted 25 meters off the predicted line, forcing the missile to burn fuel, correcting its course. The western drone dropped toward 500 meters, using ground clutter to poison the radar feed. The center drone plunged below the radar horizon entirely. The operator let it go, trusting the S-300 battery behind him to manage the threat. One missile struck true, another decoy destroyed in a burst of fuel and shattered metal. But the eastern pair evaded every close detonation. 4 UJ-26 drones survived. All armed. All below 500 meters. All just 60 kilometers from Kursk. And getting past the Buk battery was the easy part. For 12 minutes, the S-300 operator watched the chaos unfold. His 64N6 Big Bird radar tracked everything: civilian airliners over Istanbul, transport helicopters, even flocks of birds. But only 4 blips mattered now. 2 drones followed the M18 highway at 800 meters. The other 2 flickered in and out of the display as the terrain forced them above 100 meters. The drones navigated by inertial systems corrected by optical landmarks. Using edge detection algorithms, they matched highway shapes, dam outlines, and terrain patterns against stored templates. With no radio emissions, they stayed invisible. Accuracy: within 10 meters. The operator engaged one of the highway followers. But his 48N6 missile was designed to vaporize B-52 bombers at 200 kilometers, not hunt lawnmower-sized drones at treetop height. The fire control computer suffered a fatal flaw. It sampled target position every 100 milliseconds but updated missile guidance only every 500. For an 800 km per hour cruise missile, that worked. For a 180 km per hour drone, which moved only 5 meters between samples, the computer treated the signal as noise and filtered it out. To the system, the drone practically disappeared. Still, the launcher fired. The missile shot upward in a near-vertical climb to escape ground clutter, then arced into a gravity turn. At 30 kilometers altitude, the motor cut off. The missile coasted, reached apogee, tipped forward, and began its Mach 6 dive. All according to perfect math. Math that assumed the target would still be exactly where the computer predicted 85 seconds earlier. They thought the highway would keep them safe. But that same strip of asphalt became the drone's perfect guide, its silent path straight into the heart of Russia's air defenses. Power lines stretched southeast, rail lines ran south, and both offered the only terrain masking for low-flying machines. Everyone knew these routes. Timing, not stealth, decided life or death. But timing couldn't fix the system's biggest flaw. Once a Russian 48N6 missile launched, it had one job: destroy. No override, no abort, no second chances. Even if the operator realized he'd locked onto a friendly, the missile would still complete its kill chain. 2 blips glowed on the operator's radar. One, his missile, climbing toward the edge of space. The other, a Ukrainian drone, hugging the highway at crawling speed. 60 seconds to impact. The drone held course, too perfectly. At 40 seconds, it snapped east toward a reservoir. Not evasion, another pre-programmed waypoint. Ukrainian planners had already calculated the S-300's engagement timing and coded the turn in advance. The 48N6 tried to follow, but a Mach 6 missile doesn't turn, it arcs. Its intercept point slid nearly a kilometer behind the drone's real path. The seeker saw nothing but empty sky. Before the operator could process the miss, a second drone rose sharply to 2,000 meters, presenting itself like a gift-wrapped target. Too perfect. Too obvious. But orders were orders. He fired anyway. Meanwhile, the drone that dodged the first missile dropped to 50 meters and hugged the high-tension power lines. The 330,000-volt grid exploded into a storm of electromagnetic noise. Radar pulses shattered into hundreds of false echoes. The drone's tiny signature vanished, like a whisper inside a thunderstorm. The climbing drone continued its suicide run. A $30,000 decoy baiting a $2 million missile. The 48N6 found it easily. The blast tore it apart in a cloud of composite shards. And with that sacrifice, its partner disappeared into the electric chaos. The operator swept the radar again. Nothing but interference. 3 more drones briefly crested a rise to the north. He launched 2 missiles blind, guessing where they would be in 3 seconds. Nothing hit. 4 missiles gone. 1 drone down. 3 still inbound. He grabbed his field radio. Kursk, 3 contacts. Low altitude. 6 minutes. All ammunition expended. The airfield, sitting deep in the so-called rear area, was supposed to be untouchable. Doctrinally protected. Layered by SAMs. In reality, Kursk had 1 soldier and 1 Igla launcher. Sirens wailed at 13:55. The guard sprinted outside, Igla on his shoulder, scanning the sky. No roar of jets, no thump of rotors, just a faint buzzing, like a lawnmower drifting across the wind. A black cross emerged from the haze. 3 meters across, 500 meters up, closing in at highway speed. The Igla's seeker searched for heat. But this drone didn't burn like a jet at 800 degrees. Its tiny engine barely hit 300 degrees, blending with sun-heated concrete. The pusher prop mixed the exhaust instantly, erasing even that small thermal trace. The guard wrestled with the 30 kilograms launcher as the lock tone flickered, on, off, half-lock, lost again. Everything in his sight was warm. Buildings, pavement, vehicles, even the air. Still, orders were absolute. Engage anything unidentified. He fired. The missile streaked out, scanning its narrow cone for heat. The drone flew too low, too cold, too blended into the background. The proximity fuse never triggered. The missile skimmed 15 meters below its target and self-destructed in a puff of gray smoke. The guard lowered the empty launcher. Then he saw them. 3 more drones behind the first, splitting into multiple attack vectors. Too many angles. Too little time. Even with more missiles, he could only cover 1 sector while the others slipped through. At 2 kilometers out, the lead drone activated its optical system, scanning the parked aircraft below. And the strike was just beginning.